All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to SEO Week Day number 2. Um, we are going to get started now. I know there's still a few people joining, but they shouldn't miss too much from these intro slides. For those of you who joined us yesterday, thank you again for joining us today. And do remember that we have sessions running through the end of the week. So today, we're going to be talking about performing a technical audit in 2018. What does it include? What are some of the most important things that you need to take into account? And some specific steps and insights to help you do more. Now, before we get started with our webinar, I do want to give a note to those of you who weren't here yesterday. I want to talk a little bit about Pi Day, or about SEO Week. So SEO Week was something we created 4 years ago in honor of our spiritual leader, our unofficial mascot, Albert Einstein. Einstein's birthday falls on Pi Day, which coincidentally is today, March 14th, or 3.14. So to celebrate Einstein's never-ending search for answers, we decided to start our own week dedicated to search. It's been wonderful for the past 3 years, and we're really proud to present to you SEO Week 4.0. So we hope you all enjoy, and we hope it continues adding value to all the SEO and marketing professionals that are out there joining us today. One note I did want to say, another one of our spiritual mentors, Stephen Hawking, passed away today. So we did want to note that, and if you're not familiar with him, please take a look at some of his books, take a look at some of his studies and research he's done. He really is someone that we idolize here, and our fanatically analytical team wants to recognize this person who has passed today on Pi Day. So moving into our agenda for the day. So today we're going to speak about the value of doing a technical audit for your e-commerce website. We're going to talk about the Google index, what should be indexed, what shouldn't be. We're going to talk about how to diagnose bloat in the index. We're going to speak a little bit about bots and what they're doing on your site. We're going to speak to optimizing crawl budget, finding issues on your site, and finally, we're going to end with some question and answer. Now, today's speakers, for those of you who were here yesterday, you'll probably remember my voice, as well as those of you who have attended past webinars. But I'd like to introduce a special guest today. We have our SEO manager, Christy Labarca, joining us to help walk us through a lot more of the technical elements of this webinar. Hey, Christy.
Hi, Steve.
Great to have you today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes, I do want to share a little bit about NetElixir for those of you who are new to our brand. NetElixir is a dedicated search marketing agency who is looking to help decode what makes people click. So unlike other agencies that mainly just focus on the clicks and maybe only looking at the data itself, we'd like to peer deeper and understand what motivates your customers. Why are they doing what they're doing? And then we use that to educate our strategy and build search marketing programs that really connect you with your customers. We have solutions for paid search, SEO, display, paid social, Amazon and marketing places, and other marketing technology related services. Our team is composed of over 120 fanatically analytical search marketers operating in 3 countries around the world, making sure that your account is covered at all times of the day. We help you own the search bar. So no matter where your customers are looking, whether it's on search engines or social media or marketplaces or any other places that spring up in the future, we want to make sure we help you own all those search bars, allowing you to connect with your customers and allowing them to find your products quickly and easily. We're a Google Premier partner, a Bing Select agency, and we're proud to be the UPS exclusive search marketing partner. And again, shout out to my UPS reps. I know I've seen quite a few of you who are on today. We work with clients specifically in the retail space and have experience across nearly every major retail category, including consumer electronics, flowers, gifting and delivery, apparel, department stores, cosmetics, and nearly everything in between. But enough about us. We came here to talk today about technical audits. Now, one of the things that happens when we talk about technical audits is immediately people stiffen up and they get afraid, right? They say, oh, that sounds like a lot of work. We don't have the time. We don't have the resources to do an audit. We need to just get our job done and make things happen. But what we want to accomplish today is to share that audits don't necessarily have to be scary. And it's not necessarily something that's going to take months and months of your time to do. In fact, in the next 40 minutes or so, Christy's going to walk you through some of the ways that you can complete an audit in a few days for your site and take those insights to make meaningful SEO progress. Now, here's why you should consider embracing an audit. First and foremost, you need to understand how Google sees your site. If you want to fix any issues that you're having, right? How can you know what to fix if you don't even know how you show up in search results in the first place? Secondly, you want to make sure the right content's being indexed, right? Many of you have had businesses that have been running for decades, right? You've been selling online for years and years and years. And for a lot of people, there's also been team turnover in that amount of time. So for a lot of websites, there may be content showing up in the index that most of you aren't even aware is there. So it's important to understand what content's showing up and making sure it's the right content that your customers should be seeing. Next, you want to be able to identify red flags early so that they can make you more money or save you from costly errors, right? For example, if half your site isn't being indexed, not only are you losing out on that revenue, but you're also creating a pretty bad brand experience for your customers. And we want to prevent that at all costs. Finally, audits are a great way to help your team revisit old content that may spark new ideas. You may see things in your index that you worked on 5 or 6 years ago that you say, hey, that's an initiative we should start up again. We completely forgot about that. And it really forces you to understand how your site is structured, why it's structured that way, and what's going on behind the scenes that may be causing some effects on the front end. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, isn't that why I have a development team? We have people that build websites and code and do all the IT work. That's true. And most of those teams are very talented at what they do. The issue that we run into many times is that there is always more than one way to skin a cat. And sometimes development teams are taking steps that work the best in their workflow, but don't necessarily meet the needs of Google or your users from an SEO perspective. So this is a great opportunity for you to collaborate with those folks, teach them what some of these best practices are, and also get their insight into why a site is built a certain way so that your SEO team can use that knowledge to figure out a good game plan moving forward. So I think you've heard enough from me. It's now time to hand the mic over to Christy. She'll walk you through getting started with your technical SEO audit and the steps you need to take today.
Thanks, Steve. So the first thing that we're going to talk about from our technical audit is Google's index. And the index, explained simply, is Google's massive database of all websites and pages that have been crawled. It's important to know that not all pages get indexed. Sometimes Google is indexing the right pages. Sometimes it's indexing the wrong pages. And once a page is indexed, Google then applies its algorithms and such as RankBrain and things like that to determine a page ranking for a specific search query. reason that we want to audit the index first is because we really want to understand what is being indexed and what parts of your website Google's finding valuable. This will help you understand whether the most valuable parts of your site are being valued properly by Google, and whether it's indexing the right content, as previously mentioned, and associating the appropriate page rank to that specific content. Many times we find in the index that there's pages that shouldn't even be in there, kind of weighing down your overall page rank. And how authority is being dispersed across your site is based on a ratio of valuable pages to non-valuable pages, which basically means, for example, if you have a website that's 100 pages and only 10 of those pages are valuable, we don't really want Google to waste its time on the other 90 pages. We don't want it to give you a overall page rank based on those 90 pages that aren't as good as the 10 high quality pages. So that's kind of where we talk about the idea of the ratio of page rank and good pages to non-valuable pages. So there's two places that will primarily check the pages of your index, and there's a public kind of audit and a private audit. So we're mostly going to focus on the public section of this today, which is a site:/domain search, and we'll take you through that shortly. And the private one, which we do recommend checking, is looking at your Search Console, which you should have access to, connected to Google Analytics. And if there's discrepancies between what you find in the Search Console and the public audit that we're going to do today, we definitely recommend looking further into that, as it might indicate a bigger red flag. So here we did a site search for bananarepublic.com. So if you guys would like, you could open another tab and actually do the same thing for your own website. And all you have to do is put site:/yourdomain.com. And right here we can immediately see that bananarepublic.com has 7,500 results, which means in translation that there's 7,500 pages being indexed from bananarepublic.com. The value in this is that we could see instant information that will provide some type of insight into what is going on, or at least give you some clues. For example, we see here that immediately we could see home, Banana Republic, Gap. We see that twice. So that's a red flag to us. There could be many different kind of reasons that this is going on, but it is an immediate instant information that we could see just by doing this simple site search. So where to look? Basically, we want to see if there's a disparity between the number of pages indexed and the number of pages on your site. So you should know how many SKUs you have, for example. How many pages, how many product detail pages do you have, and how many blog pages do you have? If you're Banana Republic and you have 7,500 pages being indexed, if you only have 1,000 SKUs, I'm sure Banana Republic has more SKUs than that, but if you only have 1,000 SKUs and you know you don't have 6,000 pages full of content and category information, then you know that there's a discrepancy between how many pages are being indexed and how many pages should be indexed, right? So this is what you kind of have to think about, and we'll kind of apply different in different situations. In that case, you have too many pages indexed. In another case, maybe you know that you have 50,000 products and you only have 10,000 pages being indexed. In that case, we know that you're not having enough of your product detail pages being indexed. So once you do this, check and see, if anything looks out of place, kind of judge this in your head and take this forward to looking to what should be indexed. Okay, so looking for what should be in the index when you're doing this search, you want to make sure your home page is there, category pages, product detail pages, and information pages, which takes us back to what Stephen covered yesterday on the information architecture of an e-commerce site. Some optional things that you might have available are other media such as PDFs. You might see other subdomains or landing pages and archive pages for some sites. This is some of the stuff that it's okay to see in the index for your site search. So red flags, basically this is what you don't want to see, or things that you would kind of flag and look further into. Dynamic URLs or parameters such as, for example, ID equals, here we have the example 1, 2, 3, 4. If you see this, you're probably indexing URLs that are not adding value to your site. A similar one are filtered URLs, and filtered URLs are, for example, from faceted navigation, which again, Stephen had covered yesterday, which is common on e-commerce sites, would filter out category pages by a size or a color. These URLs you don't want indexed because they're dynamically generated and they can be infinite, and they're not adding value to how Google views your site. Tracking URLs are another one, such as sources, Facebook, or some type of URL parameters. We know that a lot of marketers have campaigns set up a certain way with certain tracking parameters to track the efficiency of specific campaigns, which is fine, but there has to be some type of directives in place to make sure that Google doesn't count this as duplicate content. Another red flag is backend or customer login pages. So if you see this in your site search, we recommend immediately taking some type of action, because this could actually be a security concern. We don't want, and we're sure you don't want anyone having access, anyone from the public having access to where your backend or customer login pages are. And this often can sometimes be found in a site search. Site search results. What this means is basically your website most likely has a personalized site search where a customer can come and search for a specific item. We want to make sure that that search box within your site, those results are not indexed in Google, because that again creates an infinite number of potential dynamically generated pages. That's not something that you really want indexed, because anybody could then create an endless number of pages on your site. Low value pages, basically what we mean by this is something that you may, for example, have written 7 years ago when you first started your site, a blog entry, or something similar, or possibly a product that you no longer have in stock and never will have in stock. If this isn't adding value to your site, this is another red flag that we would recommend kind of marking off and potentially taking an action item to remove or get rid of. Duplicate pages could mean several things. For example, you might have, due to tracking parameters or something similar, you may have the same page indexed twice, just with a different URL. You also may have a situation where, for example, you change your URL structure and you didn't set up the proper redirects or directives on your page to redirect the old URL to the new URL. Now you're going to end up with the same product in Google's index and on your website twice with 2 different URLs. That's another thing that we want to look out for on Google's index. The next one is checkout or confirmation pages. So this is another thing that we don't want to see in the index. That's a red flag for us. This is something that should only be reserved for customers. It's also a little bit of a privacy and safety concern. And again, it just doesn't add value. It could be dynamically generated as well, depending on how you have your checkout set up in your CMS. The last one is some standalone images or media attachments. So you might have a situation where you have a specific PDF, for example, that you only gave to certain customers. You don't really want this indexed. Maybe you had it set up to your server, somebody uploaded it and never put the proper password on it, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. That's something you want to look out for and make sure that the public cannot access as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chrissy. And one thing to consider when we look at all of these red flags is this is not a comprehensive list, right? Only you and your developers can know what types of pages on your site should or shouldn't be indexed. Now, depending on your e-commerce platform, your CMS, or a mix of these 2 systems, you may have other red flags that you can identify, or some of these might not be an issue at all. So we do encourage you to really understand the site architecture, how your site is built, and what your goals are before going off and marking any of these things as red flags or green flags.
Yeah. Here we have an example of one of the red flags that we previously mentioned that you typically would at least want to look further into. If you do a site : Best Buy, which obviously is a very popular e-commerce or just retailer in the United States, and if you use the search query in URL search, we could see that we get 1.5 million results for this query alone. So that means that Best Buy has 1.5 million URLs just with a search parameter in their URL that is not adding value to their site. So again, even though they're a big, well-known retailer, they're not properly handling the way their searches are indexed.
And this is an interesting point. I wanted to note that there are certain search operators that can be really helpful to you while auditing. And I thought it was important enough to interrupt Christy to discuss some of these with you, because I think it'll save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches when going through this process. So search operators are tools that you can use directly within Google search to help you filter results. In this case, the site : and the in URL : Some of the most popular ones that we use are site : which only shows index pages from the particular domain you type in URL, which will only find links with those specific words in the URL. The minus keyword tool, this allows you to filter out any URLs with a specific word. For example, if I only want to look at pages on my site but don't want to look at blog posts, I could put -/blog to make sure I exclude all of those pages from the search results, allowing me instead to focus on products, categories, and other pages. There's the file type operator, which allows us to filter for specific types of files, in this case, most commonly PDFs, Word documents, HTML, things like that. And then finally, wildcards and price. There are many search operators you can be using. I encourage you to check out the Google developers website for a list of those. But the key here is that you can combine these to get a lot of interesting results. Here's an example. If I do site : NetElixir.com, file type PDF, and then newsletter in quotes, you could see that I'm looking for any PDFs on the NetElixir website that include the word newsletter. And as you could see here, I've been able to filter out hundreds, if not thousands, of other pages and only find the results that met this query, allowing me to do a more efficient audit and find red flags quicker and easier than I would have been if I was simply going page by page through the different search engine results pages. So please, I encourage you to check those out. Feel free to reach out to us if you have questions, but this is a great tool to help you complete this part of the audit. And on that note, I did now want to move on from auditing the index itself to crawling and auditing your own website.
So once you complete your audit of the index, again, we want to focus on auditing your own site via a site crawl. And these are some of the popular tools, both free and paid, that you could use to crawl your site. Streaming Frog, Spotify, Deep Crawl, Moz, and SEMrush are just some of the tools that you could try out. And the big goal of crawling your site is you want to see how Google sees your site. So Googlebot is, of course, a spider, and we want to essentially simulate this the crawling of your website. So we want to see how Google is seeing your site and what it's seeing. This will help us discover further red flags, identify areas of improvement, and also fill any technical gaps that may have been missed either throughout development or throughout previous site crawls or audits. And again, of course, we'll be able to match the findings from the index audit earlier to these findings as well and kind of prioritize what's most important. And most importantly, we'll be able to optimize your crawl budget. So crawl budget is something that we talk about a lot, and you may hear about a lot, but it may have not ever been explained to you. And basically, talking about the crawl budget, every website has a certain crawl budget that it's allocated. So Google is not going to crawl every web page every time it crawls your site. And its index is only as accurate as the depth and recency of your site's crawl. So what this means is basically that every time you update your site, Google does not index that update immediately. And the more that you give it directives and the more you tell it what to do, the more optimized you are, the more efficient that your crawl budget will be. And again, we want the most important pages to be crawled the most often. We want Google to know where their value is. And we don't want the crawler to spend time on things that are not relevant or not valuable. And Google has resources. It's using its resources to crawl your site. So we don't want it to spend its resources on things that are not important or in things that go nowhere. So things like such as broken links, redirect chains, and duplicate content, or any other low value elements. We don't want Google to waste its time there, because again, its crawl budget is part of its resources as well as yours. So looking at what we look for in a crawl, the first thing is meta tags, which is also referred to as HTML tags or metadata. And this is a very basic level of things to look for, but it is very important, and I think sometimes a little bit underestimated. So we want to make sure we emphasize this. Check the individual tags on each of the following. So for page titles, we want to make sure that you have the proper page title length, which is approximately around 65 to 70 characters. And the content of the page title should just be directly what the page is about. So if it's a page on sneakers, then it should be something like brand name sneakers or something like that. For meta descriptions, you have the length being anywhere from 150 to 160 characters roughly, and you want to have compelling, persuasive copy, as this is the content that shows up on the search engine result page under this URL and page as a search result. Headers are H1 tags such as H1, H2, and this we want to make sure that they're used the right way in terms of hierarchy, and that they're also telling Google what your page is about and the way the page is structured. And then the last one that we have here is image tags. So for image tags, we want to make sure that any image that you have on your site has an alt text, as well as a title and a descriptive copy. And we want this alt text to just tell the search engine what the picture is an image of. So we don't recommend keyword stuffing, of course, or just kind of putting keywords in for the sake of it. You really just have to be natural sounding for all of these and make sure that you're explaining to Google and to the user, as we discussed yesterday, what the picture is about in this case, or what the page is about, meta description and header. So again, in avoiding keyword stuffing, we can't emphasize that enough to avoid keyword stuffing and over optimizing. It's very important to sound natural and be readable for humans. So the next thing we want to look for in a site crawl is response code. So response codes are basically a signal to your browser when the signal to what the browser sees when it tries to load your page on your site. The 200 codes are telling the browser that everything is good, the page is loading successfully. 300s are redirects. So we generally want to aim for 301s over 302s, but you may sometimes often see 302s as well. If you see internal 301 redirects or 302 redirects, we recommend updating these to have the 301 redirect instead linked to the final destination page. So there's no reason to have an internal URL redirect. You could really just set it up to go directly to the final page that it's going to. If you have that control internally, there's no reason that you shouldn't have that set up. So 400 error codes, which will often be 410s or 404s, these indicate broken links. So if you have internal broken links, again, something that you have control over, you want to set up a redirect for this page, or you want to take off the link completely if it's a page that no longer exists or is no longer relevant to the specific page that it's found on. And then 500s, these are server errors. They can sometimes also mean broken links, but they're typically a server level error that will require you speaking to your developer or your server company to see what's going on with that and why these server errors are coming up. So another thing that we want to look for in a crawl is on-page directives. And on-page directives are basically specific instructions to a crawler to help them understand what to do on a page. And these are some of the popular ones that we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth. The first one is no index, and this tag tells Google what pages should be suppressed from the index. A canonical tag identifies the master page that should be indexed when duplicates exist. A nofollow tag tells a crawler not to follow any links on that page or element, and this, of course, is not the same as a no index. We'll talk a little bit more about this briefly. And a robots.txt is a separate file that gives specific crawling instructions to the crawler or spider crawling your site. So a no index tag, this should be used on pages that you don't want indexed in Google or another search engine. It's especially useful on thank you pages, pages in development, or campaign pages. For example, if you have a specific page that you're only promoting on Facebook and you don't want people in search engines to be able to find it, you would add a no index tag for Google onto that specific page so Google doesn't index it in its index at all. It could often be used as a failsafe in case the robots.txt fails to block. And this is in the case that if the robots.txt didn't block it and you want to get it out of the index, you could use this to show Google that you don't want the page indexed any longer on the next time it crawls your site. And this should be built in the template for any logged in pages or private pages, just as a kind of foundational safety hazard to make sure that those pages for members don't get indexed ever, and no one has kind of insight into that part of your website. So the canonical tag should be used on all possible duplicate pages, and canonical tag should really identify the master page of a set of pages that is similar or duplicate. This is helpful for similar pages, archived pages, tracking URLs, dynamic URLs, and other areas that might trigger duplicate content. So for example, in the search, the search results page that we found earlier, you may want to just either actually no index that search URL, or you could put a canonical tag for it. So this way Google will not index every single situation, every single search result that is found. An example we have listed here is that you would want to add to this master and all similar pages a canonical tag for green dresses. So you might have green dresses in a size small, medium, large, etc. You would want to have each of those URLs tagged with this specific URL of green dresses, so Google knows where to attribute the authority and link value to. So it knows that your duplicate content is not really, you're acknowledging that it's duplicate content, but you want all the value to be attributed here. So nofollow tag. So the important thing about a nofollow tag that we want to emphasize is that it's a little bit different from a no index, and it doesn't necessarily have to be used together, but it can. The purpose of the nofollow is to really remove link equity from flowing out of a page. So, and a nofollow can be implemented at a page level or at an individual element level. It's commonly used in situations, the situation I think of the most is for blog comments. If you have a blog and if your site has a lot higher page rank or page authority, you want to tag that blog comment area with nofollow, because then anyone would be able to kind of leave a comment in your blog with a link to their site and get your page value crossed over to them. So that's one of the areas that we commonly use a nofollow tag. The thing with this also is that it could be used to no index, to fully hide pages that impact from crawlers. So if there's a page, for example, that you want to not pass any authority through Google and you don't want this indexed at all, then in that case you would use no index, no follow to make sure that no rank passes through. Some other situations that you'll find no follow tags useful are, again, paid links, comment sections, as we mentioned, affiliate links, links and widgets, and login or private page links. And here we have the example that you would add this nofollow tag to a login element on your sign-in page, because that's not someplace that you want the nofollow tag to pass. That's not someplace that you want Google to pass authority through. You'd rather it stop there and just kind of attribute that value from where it left off to your site. So robots.txt. Robots.txt is a separate file that tells a crawler or spider or search engine how to handle crawling your site. This is usually one of the first things that the spider will access when it's crawling your site, in addition to the sitemap. And this could be used to block entire sections or create crawl rules for your specific site or subdomain. For example, if you have a members section of your website rather, you would have a directive set up to disallow members as a subdirectory, and this would prevent the bot from crawling all of the pages with members in it. This is important because we don't want Google to waste its time on pages that are not valuable or not adding any additional value to your site or any additional kind of differentiation to your other content. So common other uses include blocking entire bots. So you could, we have clients that block certain bots altogether because it might impact your hosts or your server. Blocking dynamic URLs, so dynamically generated URLs such as the search parameters we mentioned earlier. Blocking filters, site search results, which we kind of previously mentioned. And then, of course, you could also allow a certain page in an otherwise blocked folder. So an example of this would be, say that you have a blocked folder in your robots.txt that has a CSS file that Google now needs in order to properly render a page. In this case, we would be able to set up a directive to continue blocking what has been blocked and allow a specific file as needed. And we would also use a robots.txt to declare a sitemap to kind of let the bots know where their sitemap is and to manually set a crawl delay if needed.
There is something I want to discuss here. A little note on how to block pages. This is really confusing. You can go to any SEO blog. You can talk to a lot of SEO professionals. You could talk to agencies, clients, and across the board, you're still going to get different results from folks because these continue to be really confusing, I think, in the SEO world. So we wanted to simplify and give you a few rules, for most cases, not all, but a few rules to help you understand how to block different pages. So if you don't want the search engine to crawl the page at all, you want it to turn left instead of going right, that's when you'll use robots. So when the crawler hits your robots.txt page before it crawls your site, it sees you don't even want it to explore the member section, it will steer clear of that completely. In some cases, you want Google to crawl the page, but you don't want it in the index. Why is that? Well, you might have a page, like a campaign page, for example, that you only want people on Facebook to see, like Christy's earlier example. However, that page has valuable links that you want the crawler to follow. Or you may considering pulling the no index in the future. In those situations, we recommend using a no index tag on the page itself. Note, this is a lot more flexible than robots as well. Robots is very good at declaring large sections of your site off limits, where no index has a little bit more nuance, and we can use it as marketers a little bit more freely in our efforts. Finally, you have pages that are private, and you don't want anyone seeing them, whether they're people, whether they're bots, whether it's some sort of crawler someone's developed. If you have a page that should absolutely not be seen by anyone without permission, then we recommend password protecting that page. Because even using robots, even using no index, sometimes things happen and sometimes those pages can go public. We don't want to leave that up to chance, so we want to make sure that we password protect or otherwise use similar security means to keep those pages out of the view of the public. Now, you can consider using these elements together. For example, you might block your membership page from robots and then also password protect it for that extra layer of security. so that it's harder to find where the page is, and if someone does find it, they still can't access it. In addition, you may also combine, say, robots with a no index. That way, if something happens and you, for example, set up your robots wrong maybe, or forget to exclude a certain category, you still have that no index to fall back on as your kind of second line of support. So we do hope that this helps you, and this little note on blocking pages, screenshot this if you need to, and feel free to reach out if you have questions, because we understand that there are many different situations where one of these might be involved.
The next thing that we want to talk about on what you should look for in a site crawl is secure versus insecure content. So in the last year and a half or 2 years, Google has placed a lot of importance specifically on HTTPS protocol, which is its encryption protocol, which is in relation, of course, to privacy concerns that recently emerged pretty much across, I think, the internet and other search engines as well. So one thing that we do look for in a site crawl, and we recommend you look for, is having secure content and red flagging any content that is insecure. So when you crawl, and you want to look for anything that is tagged as HTTP, and make sure that it's being redirected at a server level to HTTPS. And this is any element, whether it's a specific HTML page or a CSS element, anything like that should be declared as secure. And if it's something that's hosted on a CDN or another server, you want to contact your server provider or the service that you're working with and ask them why they have not yet switched to encrypted, and if they plan to. And in that case, I would also recommend having a forced HTTPS rules on your site, which is a bit more advanced, but if you have any questions, you can just let us know on that. But the important part for the crawl is to really identify insecure assets like images or any other third-party content, and at least you have a starting point from there. So the thing that a tool that you could use to identify how your site is resolving the 4 most common URLs is httpstatus.io. We would recommend, we did an example here with NetElixir, to put in the 4 URLs, the 4 possible starting home pages for your site, which is, in our case, is https //www.netelixir.com, and then you can see the other 3 ways below, which would be the same for any domain. Check and see that all of these are resolving to 200 status code. So you can see here that there's a 301 redirect in place, and this is at a server level, all to the right final destination preferred display domain, which is, in our case, https www.netelixir.com. So we recommend trying this out and making sure that all of these URLs resolve to your preferred domain.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. I know we packed a ton of information in 44 minutes. So if there are any follow-ups, please feel free to shoot your questions over now, so you have time to type them. We do want to remind you that we do have 2 more sessions happening this week. Again, on Thursday, we'll talk about using Amazon to fuel organic growth. So for those of you who are using Amazon or who are looking to get into it in the near future, this is definitely a must-attend event, and we highly encourage you to join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. And then finally, SEO Week ends with a bang on Friday at 1, where we'll talk about advanced tactics for omni-channel growth. Not only talking about SEO, but talking how it connects to some of your other digital channels to make sure you're giving one experience to your users and not operating in silos. Again, if you have any colleagues that you think would benefit from this, they could still register for the past 2 sessions by joining at netelixir.com/webinar. We also want to offer you a free technical audit of your own. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, I don't have the resources, I don't have the time, we don't have the people. That's okay. We are offering a high-level technical SEO audit to help you identify issues on your site and give you some insights and solutions to help you fix those with no obligations afterwards. So go to netelixir.com/contact, drop in your information, give us a little bit of context about your site, and we'll be reaching out to you within the next couple days to set that audit up. So in the last 2 minutes here, again, I want to respect your time. I know we're getting very close. I do want to answer, we did see a few questions come through, so we want to make sure that we're answering them. And if we don't get to your question, I promise that we will respond to you via email. So here's one. We don't want to call out the business, but they said, what happens if I do a site search for my website and nothing shows up? So we had one of our SEO analysts checking this out throughout the webinar to help us diagnose this. First and foremost, you're going to want to go in and check out if there are any of those negative directives, right, Christy?
Right. I would definitely recommend checking the view source code of your site. If first off at the HTML level, and if you don't see anything there, check at a server level to see if there's any tags that are a no index tag that's blocking your page from being indexed. I would definitely, if you've recently migrated or changed your site over, that would be a situation in which case you would probably find that that might be the case.
Yeah, and in this specific instance, we found some 403 forbidden errors. So that's big no-no.
Yep.
So for the person that asked that question, again, feel free to follow up with us or send that message directly to your developers. You're going to want to get that fixed ASAP.
And a 403 error, by the way, in this case, likely means that your server is being blocked from bots completely. So I would definitely recommend finding out what the deal is with that immediately.
So thank you for that question. Something everyone should check up on right after this. Someone asked, is it okay to have image titles exactly the same as the alt tag? Yeah, I think so. The two pieces of information are really for different uses, right? One's for accessibility, Christy?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. I think that it's okay in some cases if you're kind of showing one to the user and one to the bot. If you can have some a little bit customized, it would be preferred. So if you have 3 pictures of the same thing, for example, and one maybe is the bottom of a shoe, one is the top of a shoe, and one is the back of a shoe, we would recommend having that customized. But if you can, if it's not the worst thing in the world, it's just we would prefer that it be customized.
Yeah, I have another analyst here telling me to treat it like you would sometimes with meta title and your meta description, and use your judgment when you're making those decisions. So not going to be the most impactful thing, but those small gains could add up over time, and it could be something that helps you in the long run. Understandably, we have a lot of questions asking about recordings. Yes, these will all be recorded. Someone asked Christy, what were the ideal character lengths for meta title and meta description that you mentioned?
So for meta title, we recommend about 60 to 70 characters. And for meta description, we recommend about 155 to 170. Google has recently actually increased how many characters they'll allow for the meta description in some cases. So we did bump that up a little bit recently.
I think that's all the time we have for today. We have a few more questions. We will follow up with you after the webinar. So we want to thank you all again for joining us. We want to wish a happy birthday to Mr. Einstein. We want to wish a happy Pi Day to everyone else here. And we hope to see all of you at SEO Week tomorrow at 1 p.m. and again on Friday for our thrilling conclusion. Thanks everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you.